In this video, we're going to take some time to build some beans, or some Java beans, that we can use throughout our system. So we'll take a look at how we would create the class and actually go about setting it up to be a bean. What we'll do is have some of these already in place for you. So if you want to start and work along with me, we can do the JSP beans and standard actions starter.war file. Or if you'd like to just see the completed code as we're doing the video, you could load JSP beans and standard actions beans complete.war. And either one of these is fine. Again, the starter, you'll need to do some typing along with me. So what we're going to do is look at some different models that we can use to model the information from our world database that we have in our MySQL server. Right now there's three tables: country, country language, and city. And so we're going to build the bean model for city here in just a moment. But what we'll have in place already for you is country and country language and their unit tests, as well as one more model called web user. For this one, we're just going to have that available so that we can model a user. We might actually move this to the database in a little while. For right now, though, rather than just storing UID and password randomly throughout our pages in session, we can now store a web user object this way. So we'll go ahead with that forward. So you might want to take a look at the code real quick, and any of these, they just have some basic properties, and all of that's in place for you. So there's web user, again, country language, and country, which model exactly what the fields are in the table and have all of the bean information already set up for you. What we're going to look at then is city. While we're doing this, we'll take a look at a couple other things. By the end of this, we should be pretty familiar with how to work with beans as far as setting them up in the Java code. So of course, the first thing we need to do is we need to change our city class, or any of our classes that are going to become beans, to be serializable. That's one of the main parts of the specification. So we'll say implements serializable. And once we do that, of course, it'll give us a nice little squiggly that says you don't have that imported, so we'll do that. And then it'll give us a squiggly over city that says it doesn't have a default serial, so we'll go ahead and do that. So with that, we already have our city set up as a serializable class that now has the long serial version of UID. The next part is we need to model the default constructor so that we have the default constructor in place for our class, and that will always be in place. Now what I've done is I've actually created code, and I've put it in the citycode.txt so that we can easily do this without having to type. So let's go ahead and grab the default constructor out of that city code and go back into our city class and just drop that default constructor in there. Now that way we don't have to worry about typing it, and this will give us the default constructor which will be in place. Granted, this is implicit. If we didn't put it here, it would still be there. But since this is going to be a requirement, in the case that someone might actually decide in the future to add an explicit constructor, it's a good idea to go ahead and just have it in place already. The next thing that we need is private variables to manage all of our properties. So here we have 5 different properties: ID, name, country code, district, and population. And those are of various types, integer and string, depending on what their purpose is. So we'll go ahead and add those into place in our code. And with that, now they're saying they're not used, but we have all of those in place. What we need is our get and set. So this is going to be very important. We want to name our variables with camel case, which we've seen all throughout our demonstrations. The camel case will give us a good standard to follow. The thing to note, though, is for information, every time we're going to create a get and set for a bean, our first letter will be capitalized on our variable. So it will still work, but it will look a little different than what we might intuitively expect. So what you can see here is for get ID and set ID already, we see that there's a capital I. And of course, the name is capitalized, district is capitalized. And we'll go ahead and just grab our toString as long as we're here, and we can bring all that code over and quickly look at it in our city file here. We'll just drop in our properties for get and set, our mutators and accessors. And then, of course, I need to just Shift-Tab to get that back over. Let's go ahead and just expand the code so we can look at it in more detail. But once again, all we're doing is get and set. Note that the capitalized letter here is simply because of the camel case when we start with get and set. So we have get name, set country code, set country code, get district, set district, and get population, set population, and a toString that just prints everything out so that we have that handy. Once we have that, we can go ahead and verify that our city code is set up correctly by running the test. Now these are just set up right here in the same package. We could have created a unit test suite that would have been in a separate package that would have just tested the same code, which is fine either way. This might be a little clunky having all of your test code and your package code in the same place, but it works. You can simply right-click on it and select Run As JUnit Test. Now, if it's the first time that you've run it, you might actually be able to just hit the Run button up here, and it might ask you, is it a JUnit test? You select to run it as a JUnit test, or we'll say Run on Server, but you want to use the JUnit test. Once you've done it once, it should continue to show up, and you should be able to just push play up there and run it as a test, or continue to run from down here, run as JUnit test. And again, Alt-Shift-X plus T. And that chord will go ahead also and do that command. So you might start to memorize that. One other thing I wanted to look at is we have the Boolean here for isOfficial. So that's the only other property that's a little bit different. I have the get isOfficial and set isOfficial, and so that gives us the ability to make sure that it's a bean standard, and so we shouldn't have any problem there. Now that we have this, we can move forward and start working with our standard actions and our expression language right against these bean objects. So we'll see that coming up soon.